Today, I'm excited to welcome Rajat Soni, chartered financial analyst with 10 years of experience in finance and now host of a personal finance and Bitcoin YouTube channel. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Rajat.
Appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm excited to talk to you too. Tell us a little bit about yourself before Bitcoin. Where are you from? Where are you living? And what did you do before you found Bitcoin?
I used to work in financial services. I worked as a bond analyst. I worked in fixed income, and I was constantly surrounded by people talking about yield, people talking about just all the finance stuff that we're most people are confused about. I mean, most people don't really quite understand it. But I mean, I started realizing over time as I studied Bitcoin, over as I studied where this thing could go, I started realizing that the legacy financial system is intentionally made very difficult to understand because that's the only way for wealth to be concentrated with the wealthy. The wealthy essentially want to own their wealth forever. They don't want to sell their assets, their stocks, their real estate. So what they do is they just borrow against those assets and they use them to pay for their lifestyle. Plus, at the same time, they get to save for the future by owning those assets. So once I kind of discovered what Bitcoin is, once I looked into it, once I studied it, it's pretty difficult not to see where it's going. And after that, I mean, it's completely different. I used to work a 9 to 5. I switched over to running my own business. It hasn't completely taken off yet, but I mean, I'm getting there over time. It's just compounding. It's just work that you put in, and eventually it grows. But that's what I've been doing over the last 10 years or so. I did my CFA designation, the Chartered Financial Analyst designation, accounting and finance in school. So I have I don't have a very, I'd say I have a pretty deep knowledge compared to the average person on how the financial system works. But of course, there's always things to learn. I'm constantly trying to learn more, constantly trying to find out things that maybe I haven't picked up on yet. And that's my journey to getting to this point.
And I've heard you say that in school and in all your learnings, you didn't really learn about the history of money or any of that financial background, right? So most people who study the chartered financial analyst wouldn't really be asking what is money.
No, definitely not. I think the main assumption that we make in the current financial system is that the US dollar has no competitors and it never will have competitors. I think a lot of people in the financial industry, they're just seeing it that way, and they understand that because of the US dollar, because it can be created at will, it's a way for them to take advantage of the financial system. So it's just snowballed into what it is today. So right now we have this massive wealth gap where a small group of people own a ton of the houses while there's people who can't own anything. There are new generations that are coming up. They have no hope of ever owning a home because somebody at the top owns 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 homes because they just want to keep renting them out and earning yield. So this yield thing is kind of, in my opinion, what's created the wealth gap. We've started using houses, which are supposed to be shelter. We started using them as money because the money that we have doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So I think a lot of people don't even think of it that way. They just assume that the US dollar is going to be around forever. They assume that real estate is always going to be an investment. They assume that stocks are always going to be an investment. All those legacy assets, they think that the status quo will continue to be the status quo forever. But after going deeper, really learning how this thing works, really learning the tech. I don't have that deep of a knowledge on the technical side of things, but I'm trying to learn. I don't have a computer science background or anything like that, but trying to learn as much as I can. But after going deeper, if Bitcoin fails, I mean, of course it can. It always can. There's no guarantees of anything, but I think based on everything that we have right now, Bitcoin is probably the best opportunity that anyone can have in their lifetime. Like in the next 100, 200, 300 years, it's very likely that Bitcoin will be the thing that takes over everything, every monetary good that we have. It's going to extract the monetary value from rental properties. For example, a lot of people who own rental properties right now, a lot of people in the legacy financial system, they enjoy rental income. They can increase prices. They can basically just hold on to properties for however long they want to, and they can keep living their life, and they can live their life based on somebody else's work, which I don't personally think that's how it should be. I see that as a massive problem, and it's actually playing out. More and more people can't afford homes. More and more people can't afford their day-to-day lifestyle. They're struggling to pay for food. They're struggling to pay for their utilities. At the same time, there's a class of people at the top who can live extremely luxurious lives. They can have yachts. They can have vacation homes. They can have the fastest cars because the financial system is literally designed to help them do that.
So I hear you talking about the people at the top, and they are probably the last ones that are going to come to Bitcoin because they don't need it. And yes, we'll give people credit because they worked hard, but the system is set up to, once you know how to work it, that you can benefit the most. And do you think that about, the wealthy? Everyone needs Bitcoin. We know that, but they need it less than people who have some pain in their life or who are not being able to afford a house right now.
I think everybody needs Bitcoin regardless of the amount of wealth they have. Because for a wealthy person, let's say you have $100 million in assets. Every year that you don't buy Bitcoin, you're losing 10 million, 15 million, 100 or like $30 million in a way, right? So if you think about it, somebody who has $100 million real estate portfolio today, they can get 100 million. What's 100 million divided by 70,000? Let me see. I'm going to do a quick calculation. 100 million divided by 70,000. So right now they can get something like 142 Bitcoin, I believe it is, something along those lines. About 142 Bitcoin. In the near future, they're going to get 14 Bitcoin for that portfolio. Then they're going to get 1.4 Bitcoin for that portfolio. So to them, I think protecting their wealth is extremely important because they own something that everybody else wants. Let's say they own a ton of real estate. If they get rid of that real estate, if they redistribute those properties to anybody who wants them, they're going to fulfill demand. They're going to bring prices down. They're going to make life a lot easier for the rest of the world. Like if you think about it, MicroStrategy. Do you know about MicroStrategy? So they
Yes.
borrowed like $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, or sorry, worth of dollars, $5 billion to buy Bitcoin. What would have happened if instead of buying Bitcoin, they bought single family homes? If they turned into a single family home hedge fund, that would have boosted the prices up of houses significantly. So I think if the worst case here is that if wealthy people get on it early, if anything, prices of everything else is going to drop. So I mean, I think it's beneficial to both. If even if we do go to a Bitcoin standard at some point, the way that I see it, it's going to benefit the people at the bottom as well because they're finally going to be able to earn a form of money that they don't need to spend on, let's say, an asset on a stock, on a real estate property. They don't need to do that. They can just hold on to that asset. And that's what most people want. So this based on the conversations that I've had with tons of people. I do coaching sessions, like one-on-one sessions where people talk about their goals, their dreams, where they want to be. People don't want to invest. They just want to save. That's the main thing here. Most people don't want to take extra risk. They don't want to own the S&P 500. They do it because they have to. They're forced to do it. So if the form of money that they earn from their job, eventually people will be earning Bitcoin. They'll be earning Satoshis. If the form of money that they're earning doesn't need to be invested, they can just have savings. They can have more stability. They can actually invest in themselves. So instead of having to buy all these S&P 500 companies, instead of basically crowdfunding companies like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, people can do their own thing. They can follow their own path and they can innovate on their own. They can solve problems that maybe they have. And because they'll have the funding to do that, because they'll be able to save, I think the world is coming to everything is going to change. The way that I see it, things are all going to change. I think the rich people are probably going to start off with it, and then eventually the poor people are going, not poor people, but like lower middle class, they're going to be working for it. But it'll be an advantage to them regardless. It's never too late to start adopting Bitcoin. It's never too late to start adopting something that actually is good for you. So let's say if somebody thinks, oh, um, I'm too late, would they think the same way about exercising? Would they think of the same way about eating healthier? It's never too late to do something that's bad for you. Even if Bitcoin goes to a million, 10 million, $100 million, it just means that somebody's willing to accept something that's printed out of thin air in exchange for the best asset in the world. So regardless of when people adopt it, I think poor people, rich people, they'll always have a benefit of adopting it, and they'll always benefit from the growth in the ecosystem. And over time, they'll redistribute what they have. As the purchasing power goes up, they're going to want to go on vacations. They're going to want to go buy a bigger house. Maybe they're going to want to leave their job and just spend their Bitcoin and live a life of just pure freedom. And I think that's where the world is going. I think, regardless of your wealth level, you can benefit from it. But as usual, the rich people usually figure it out first. People are buying, like MicroStrategy, like we said, 250,000 Bitcoin. Michael Dell, I think he bought quite a bit of Bitcoin himself. I mean, BlackRock clients, they're buying some. But the thing is that they have the knowledge already. They have the time to actually research it. Most people at the bottom don't have the time to research it. They're working 2, 3 jobs just to make it ends meet. And it's not even that they don't have time, it's that they don't have the brain capacity because they're so tired. They're so mentally drained. Why would they want to spend even more time learning about something that they just spent hours and hours trying to earn? They want to get money out of their mind. So they're not going to figure it out until late. But again, even in the future, I think they'll be better off.
Yes, so I agree with you. I agree that even the wealthy, obviously, the earlier you buy Bitcoin, the better. The earlier you buy and you can preserve your wealth much better the earlier you buy it. I agree. I just see that they are doing pretty well. So that's one reason they might put it off because they're pretty comfortable right now. Even Michael Saylor, he bought it out of necessity. Yes, he's a wealthy man, but he started looking into it because of his company, because he wasn't making enough yield on the company. And yeah, we all know his story, and that's quite an incredible story. One of the things I love about you, Rajat, is your ex. You are so convicted, and I hear it in your voice, and I've seen a lot of your videos. You are excellent with spreadsheets, and your knowledge and your numbers are incredible. What makes you so convicted?
I think it took me about a year to understand what Bitcoin is because I just listened to so many podcasts. I listened to the Bitcoin Standard. I think once you read the Bitcoin Standard, a book like the Bitcoin Standard, you kind of get it. But then you're probably only going to, maybe just from reading the book, you're probably going to think, okay, 1 to 5% makes sense. I'm not gonna do less than that. I'm okay with 1 to 5%. But then after you read the book, I think for me at least, it made me ask more questions. It made me think, what if this happens? What if this happens? How could this thing fail? What are the possible negatives of this? Gold isn't money, so how do we make sure that Bitcoin will end up actually being money? So I think the reason why I'm so convicted, I mean, I keep in mind, I'm not, this isn't a religion to me. If something comes up that, let's say something happens where Bitcoin fails, or there's some kind of an attack, and I don't, and Bitcoin doesn't survive, the facts have changed, so has my investment thesis, and that's how it works. That's how it should work. But I think one of the things that I was thinking about before is that when I didn't understand Bitcoin, I truly thought real estate and stocks were the best thing to invest in. So I was very convicted on that before. But then once you really figure it out, once you start seeing where this is going, once you start seeing how the price of a house went from 60,000 Bitcoin all the way down to 7 Bitcoin, when you see that the price of a share of the S&P 500 went from something like 100 or 150 Bitcoin all the way down to 0.001 Bitcoin, whatever the number is. I mean, you can see the trend, and it just makes sense. It makes sense that this is a finite supply asset. There will be times where the price goes down because people who hold it will want to sell. But then there will also be times, there is going to be more times where it's going up than the times when it's going down. Once you understand the volatility, once you understand how this thing works. I think it took me hours and hours on. Do you know what mempool is by any chance?
Yes,
The mempool.space? I
yes.
think I was on there for hours and hours, and I just think seeing how the block, how the block connects, how the transaction fees work, hashing power, all that stuff. Again, I'm not an expert on it, but putting all the details together, putting all the connecting all the dots, I don't think you can't be convicted at that point. But I mean, again, like I said, if somebody comes up to me and they say, "Oh, there's this, or this," I was actually having a conversation with one of my friends yesterday. He was telling me about how maybe governments can do this or this or this, and I mean, it once you really think about it, you know for a fact that if they wanted to shut it down, they could have. They would have already. I mean, it's again, it's just a bunch of looking into the nuances, looking into just the different details that come across to you from different people's opinions, and I think that's partly why listening to podcasts is so important, because people have different questions that they ask, things that you may not have even ever thought about. For example, I listened to a podcast with Natalie Brunell and what's his name, the Bitcoin mechanic, and the podcast was about how mining pools, aren't actually as decentralized as we may think they are. And I learned something brand new, and I had to do a deeper dive. I had to keep learning, but that's the thing. It all just compounds. Once you figure out the basics, you move on to something else. Then you move on to something else. You move on to more niche areas that other people may not even have thought of. And I think one of those things that really got me convicted was there was a video by some liberal account. They were talking about how it's. I think it was basically a socialism account, but and that's perfectly fine. I like looking at different perspectives. I don't generally agree with socialists, but in this case, what he was saying is that real estate is a way to extract wealth from the poor. It's essentially extortion. Not the words that he used, not the exact point that he was making, but I mean, it kind of got me thinking. The entire system right now is designed to do that. So the conviction, I think, comes from the fact that we have nothing better. And I don't think we will have anything better for a very, very long time, unless we go to a fifth or sixth dimension and we figure out how to travel through space and another colony has a better solution for money. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, those are good points. I read the Bitcoin Standard second. I read Jeff Booth's book,
Oh, yes.
The Price of Tomorrow first. Have you read that?
I haven't, but I've listened to a lot of his podcasts. I think I don't, I probably, maybe I misunderstand certain things, but I think I get the main ideas that he's trying to put across. He's a really smart guy. His podcasts basically have everything, right? I think his podcasts explain his points so well. Of course, reading the book is going to give me some value. Maybe I'll add that to my list, but I haven't read the book. I haven't yet.
It's good for people because it puts the problem in perspective. It's about the problem, and his
Mm-hmm.
big take is that our world is deflationary, and so and his other thing is that if Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, it will take over. And in his opinion, it will. And he is a technology investor, so he gives lots of examples of the exponential growth of technology, which is also what Bitcoin is experiencing. It's hard to feel that right now because in Twitter, we're in like an echo chamber. All of us are convicted, but we still need the rest of the world to come on. You know, even I watch some of your videos and I agree with everything. I see it the same way. What do you think it's going to take for more and more people to see it as we see it?
I think so. I think there's two perspectives here. So the first thing is the user interface needs to be a little bit easier. Unfortunately, with that, it's going to probably require a little bit of centralization, or maybe a lot of centralization, because we're going to have layer twos, layer threes built on top of Bitcoin, like MasterCard, Visa. Most people don't actually use wire transfers on a on a day to day basis. Wire transfers are essentially the final settlement layer of the current financial system. So a lot of people think that because Bitcoin only does 7 transactions per second, it can't be a global financial system. I don't think that's accurate. Most people have never sent a wire transfer in their entire life, right? And if you think of it from that perspective, then the base layer probably doesn't need to scale for more people to understand this. So I've listened to different perspectives of this. Some people say that there are going to be wallets where you can confirm how much it is in the address that's associated with the wallet, and you can just give a physical key to someone worth, let's say, 500 satoshis, 1,000 satoshis, whatever it is, and the private key is there. If anybody ever wants to move it from there, they can. But and there's it's like a tamper resistant hardware that if you want to move your Bitcoin, you can. But if you do, then the next person who you maybe try to hand off that key to won't be able to access the same Bitcoin. They'll know that it's not there. But there's going to be ways for people to figure this out. There's going to be ways for more and more people to, I guess, use Bitcoin on a daily basis. I think that, so the first thing is the user interface. I think the second thing is that merchants or entrepreneurs are going to want to only accept Bitcoin for their goods and services, for the products that they create. Uh, and the reason why and the reason why I think this is going to be what really pushes adoption is because people can give discounts when you buy with Bitcoin. So for example, if I were to pay, let's say you wanted to give me some kind of product and I wanted to pay with Visa, you're not going to get everything. You're only going to get a certain amount. Let's say I used to do webinars before. I'd charge $30, $40, $50, whatever it was. I didn't get that amount. There was a middleman who took 10% of the cut, a 10% cut out of everything that I was supposed to earn. And not well, maybe it wasn't 10%, maybe it was like 5%, but whatever it was, they didn't really do anything. All they did was help to move the money from one place to another. And when merchants see that we don't have to pay these 3-4% fees, instead we just receive Bitcoin, let's say on Lightning, put it in your wallet, and then you can use that Bitcoin to pay for your expenses, and you don't have to deal with Visa, MasterCard, banks. You don't have to deal with overdraft protection. You don't have to deal with having to borrow money. I think that's probably what's going to trigger um, a lot of new users, because they're going to need Bitcoin to save money on their purchase. So let's say you're regularly going to a certain store, and the store starts giving you an offer where if you pay in Bitcoin, they'll give you 10% off, or they'll give you 15% off. If I'm regularly spending somewhere, and if let's say for my cell phone bill, I'm with a company in Canada, and let's say they say, okay, if you stay with us, we'll give you 10% off on your bill. I'll have a reason to spend my Bitcoin because now I can save. But then what I can do is once I send the Bitcoin to them, I can spend and replace. I can buy back whatever Bitcoin I spent, put it back in my wallet, and I'm good to go. But I saved some money on that transaction. If they give me a 5, 7, 8% discount, why not? It's a no brainer. I think that's what's going to push a lot of people into this. I think that's what's going to push a lot of people into really looking at it, setting up their own wallets, creating something that makes this easier will obviously do the trick as well. I think there are multiple routes that we can take, but I think the merchant one is a little bit more powerful because as entrepreneurs figure out what Bitcoin is, they're not going to be want to they're not going to want to be paid in dollars because what they're producing took time, energy. It took a lot of effort to produce. So why would you want dollars? I mean, it's going to be a few years from now. I still accept dollars because that's just the way that the financial system works right now. But eventually, things will change. I genuinely think that merchants are going to say, we don't want dollars anymore for our oil. We don't want dollars anymore for our gold. We don't want dollars anymore for everything that we produce because we want Bitcoin. And whoever doesn't have Bitcoin, of course, they're not going to be able to spend their money. They're going to have to earn Bitcoin. They're going to have to buy Bitcoin. At some point, they're never going to be able to buy Bitcoin again. And I think that should be a trigger as well. When people see that they can't buy Bitcoin anymore, it just makes them think, this is something that I need. This is something that I want. And it'll force them to learn. It'll force them to figure out what it is. But keep in mind, 90% of people won't figure out what this is. They'll have no idea. It'll just be working in the back end. That's just what I think. Even right now, how many people really understand what the financial system is? They don't.
or the internet.
Exactly. We use the internet. That's a great example. We use the internet on a daily basis, and who knows all the details of how the internet works? Let's say I use a speaker every whenever I need to, but I don't know how it works. All I know is that there's a button on there that I turn on, connect it to my phone, and I can play music. Right? The people who are saying that you need to know how Bitcoin works, everybody needs to understand how Bitcoin works before it goes crazy. I don't think that's the case. I don't think adoption is related to people understanding how it works. I think adoption is created based on merchants accepting it.
I think you're right. I think there's two good points there. The other thing I think will bring people in is number go up. 100K
Yes.
people are coming in. But for example, my I spoke to my brother-in-law today. He knows there's something wrong in the financial system. He says we're screwed when it gets to when the deficit gets to 40 trillion. I say, oh well, it will get there. I said, that's why we buy Bitcoin. He's like, oh yeah, great. Are you going to sell it 100K? Not, oh, maybe I'll look and see if I need some. The connector's not there yet. So
Yeah.
there is some understanding needed.
I think it's another thing with Jeff Booth. People look at it from the lens of the dollar. They don't look at it from the lens of some different currency. People just expect that U.S. dollars will always be valuable. All they see is that U.S. dollars can buy them utility, and that's what they want. They don't care about the actual technology. They don't care about Bitcoin. They don't care about what Bitcoin is solving. They don't understand the central banking problem. They don't understand that money is even being printed. If you go to a random person on the street, they're not going to say, if you go to a random person on the street and tell them, hey, the money that you have in your pocket was printed out of thin air. They created it and they gave it to you. And now you spend it on things. You earn it and they printed it. I think once people see that, they kind of, it doesn't make sense to them. But if you see it multiple times, if you keep saying it over and over, this is part of the reason why I post so much. If people see it over and over and over and over and over again, it starts clicking. It starts making sense. And that's part of the reason why I do what I do. A lot of my followers, a lot of people who are subscribed to me on YouTube, they had no financial background. Everybody who followed me on Twitter, I used to post purely about stocks and real estate. To these people, it was a brand new asset. And keep in mind, 15,000 people unfollowed me, right? And even with that, of course, over time, the network grew, the my platform grew, and now more people are learning from me than ever. But that's just how it is. There's waves of adoption. I'm not sure if you've read the essay, The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. No, I highly recommend it. He talks about something called Gardner hype cycles, I believe it's called. But essentially, what it is people try to figure out what this thing is. They buy it, and then other people, as the price goes up, the people who don't understand it at all, they start buying near the top. Let's say last cycle's 70,000. People bought at that price. Now people are just using that as almost a base price. They're thinking if it doesn't go above 70,000, this thing's a scam. But they don't realize that the people who bought at 70,000, they bought out of hype. And the fact that this thing is at 60,000 right now, and it's been at above 50,000 for almost 200 days, maybe more than that, that on its own is mind blowing because it means that more and more people are willing to buy it, and any sellers are getting the price that they want. At this point, I would personally say that it's a seller's market because sellers can keep asking for more and more money, and they'll get it because the buyers have not had their demand fulfilled yet.
And yet we still technically are not in the bull phase, in the full bull phase of the market yet.
Yeah, it hasn't gone vertical yet. So
No. So that's to come. So let's talk about real estate. Since you and I both have been in real estate, I'm still a realtor in Miami. My story's a little bit funny. Went into real estate because I wanted to preserve more wealth. And I realized I wasn't going to have enough for retirement. Let me buy real estate as an investment. So I bought my first property in the beginning of 2020. COVID hit. I started studying Bitcoin and I ended up selling that property for Bitcoin this year, mostly for Bitcoin. And because I saw that with property comes management, comes taxes, comes managing the tenants, and a lot of different aspects. Did you notice something similar with real estate versus Bitcoin? I know you post about it a lot.
I never owned rental properties of my own. I did own some REITs. REITs are real estate investment trusts. Not sure if your audience knows. I don't even know if my audience knows. But real estate investment trusts are basically financial institutions that buy properties and they split them up and they share them with people. It's like buying shares of a company, but you're buying shares of this house essentially. So I used to buy some REITs. I used to tell my wife to buy REITs, and because of course, the yield, because real estate has always performed, it was a no brainer. But it's only a no brainer if you assume that that US dollars will always be the form of money for the world. Real estate only goes up because, I mean, of course, there's the supply and demand, but in the US right now, I'm not sure if you know this, but there are something like 15, 16 million houses that are unoccupied. So what this means is that there are more than enough houses. They're just unoccupied. Some of them are in escrow. Some of them are just in such bad condition that people don't want to live in them. But if the prices of these houses and the land dropped and we weren't able to create fake money to fund the purchase of houses, people would be living in these houses and the demand will be it would be fulfilled. But the issue is that there's so much money to be made from keeping real estate as a financial asset that there's no incentive to change it. So I think what Bitcoin does is, instead of relying on governments to build more houses, I think Bitcoin gives entrepreneurs an incentive to build more houses. It gives the people who hoard as many houses as they can an incentive to sell what they have and instead buy Bitcoin. Like, let's say, for example, for yourself, you said you owned a rental property because you wanted to retire. You got rid of it. You added one house to the economy. Now somebody who wants to buy that house got to buy the house. Maybe they're living in it. Who knows? Maybe they have a rental agreement with someone where somebody's renting the property from them. But I think what's going to happen is eventually every house is going to be owned by the person who occupies it. And I think that's where the world should go, because housing is shelter. We need houses to have a basic standard of living. And a lot of people don't have that. There's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the very bottom of it is shelter, but we've turned shelter into something that is a financial asset. I know a lot of people compare real estate and grocery stores, but it's not the same thing. When you go to a grocery store, you take food from them. They have to stock up that food. They have a lot of work to do. They have to hire employees. They have to do a lot of work to actually give you that food. So they're taking a slight profit. Even with grocery stores, their profits are razor thin. They're earning 1-2% in profits, which means that when prices go up, they have to increase their prices, and they're not price gouging. They're finding a way to get us the freshest food possible, and there's a lot of spoilage. There's a lot of people damaging property and products that they sell. So they're not the same thing. With real estate, somebody owns a house, they keep it for however long they want to, and then they rent it to someone. They're essentially selling the time value of the house. They're forced liquidating the time value of the house. They're turning that into their own consumption. They're using it to fund the payments for the house. They're using other people's money along the way, the entire way. This is part of the reason why there's that massive wealth gap, because the rich can borrow from the poor who don't have that much money. They can borrow from the poor. They can borrow as an aggregate from all of the poor, and they can buy houses, and they can increase demand for houses. And then they can turn around and rent it to the same people who they borrowed the money from. That doesn't make any sense. I think what Bitcoin is going to do is it's going to show you all of the flaws of that system. It's going to make those flaws apparent to the entire world, because just holding Bitcoin, you can earn 50, 60% returns every single year. Of course, maybe that'll drop. Maybe that'll drop to 20, 30%, but it's still better than borrowing a few $100,000, potentially going bankrupt if the real estate market drops, and getting 20% returns on real estate. But I mean, the returns aren't even that high, but getting 20% returns versus 50% returns of doing nothing. 20% returns of doing so much work, you basically have a part-time job. I think that's what the world is going to understand. That's what the wealthiest people among us are going to figure out, and they're going to dump their properties. They have no reason to own those properties. If anything, even if they don't dump anything, maybe they'll get rid of 10%. Maybe instead of buying another house, they'll buy Bitcoin, and they'll see Bitcoin's performance, and then they'll start selling their property portfolio to buy more Bitcoin. I'm not sure if you know about Gary Cardone, Grant Cardone, those two. I think
Yes.
they're huge in Bitcoin now. They've started getting rid of their rental properties. They've started getting rid of their silver. They've started getting rid of their gold, because they know that Bitcoin is the best asset. Once you study it, it becomes so obvious, but that's the stage that most people aren't at yet. Most people haven't studied it. Most people haven't spent more than 5 minutes reading headlines. They haven't read the white paper. They haven't listened to a single podcast. They haven't read the Bitcoin Standard. And I think that'll happen. Eventually it will. But by then, hopefully, the price is still under $1 million.
Yeah, I think Gary Cardone is in Bitcoin, but I don't think Grant Cardone has bought yet because I hear Gary say on his
Ah,
channel that my brother doesn't need it yet. He does so well. But
oh, okay, okay.
but I know Gary did sell his silver for Bitcoin and his house
Yes,
and a house. So, yes, what you're saying is our financial system is set up to benefit those who own assets. And when I was studying, how can I, you know, do better and have enough in retirement? That's what I learned. Wealthy people own assets that go up in value, like real estate, gold, stocks, and poor people don't. And that's what you got to do. So it is playing the capitalist game. However, what you also said is that it's not fair on the people who don't make as much money. And I don't feel good about that anymore, right? I know everyone's entitled to own many homes, but the Bitcoin system is going to incentivize us to just save our wealth in an asset that's going to go up in value against everything else forever. Whereas that old system incentivizes the wealthy to get wealthier and the poor don't know what's happening. And information's there. You can go study it. But unfortunately, not everybody knows.
I agree. I think what it's going to do is instead of people buying stocks, people just blindly buying the S&P 500, they're going to invest in themselves. They're going to invest in their skills. They're going to invest in learning more, in starting businesses, in figuring out new things, spreading their knowledge, and being creative, because they'll have the safety, the emergency savings fund, or just the safety of savings, because they know that they're not going to lose their home if because the savings that they have lost so much value, and they can start planning for the long term instead of thinking short term. There's another concept here: time value. Because of how fiat currencies basically expire, people are given an incentive to think short term. They think about, oh, I can take on this debt. Who cares about the credit card interest? I can entertain myself. I can go on various trips. I can do all this and that. But I know for a fact that in the next 10 years, the value of my money is going to decrease anyway. So who cares? It doesn't matter. I'm okay with it. Most people just save in dollars. Almost the entire world is saving in dollars. They're not saving in stocks, real estate. So the people who are saying that, oh, stocks and real estate are better, I think they're a very small minority.
Yes, plus that takes management. Plus, you have to study the company. You have to know that Elon Musk is going to be, alive to run the company and keep things
Yep.
going. And then, of course, the real estate takes management, and not everybody is up for that.
Yep.
I don't think people see all this. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and the people who make US dollars there think that's great. That's a solid currency, and they are happy to save in US dollars. But I think the people who make the other currency there are facing some of the highest inflation in the world. So that is another reason why much of the third world comes to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, even though volatile in the short term, is going to hold the value better than their currencies.
I was actually speaking with one of my friends from Nigeria, and he was saying that even with the volatility, Bitcoin's a better asset. Bitcoin in terms, so he lives in Nigeria, and he was saying how in terms of naira, the prices keeps going up. It doesn't. The volatility is irrelevant to him. It's more about just saving and having money for, let's say, 2 months, 5 months, 6 months from now. Because if he saves in naira, then he's screwed. The value of his money is going to decrease by 30, 40% in a year. So to him, the volatility is irrelevant, because he knows that long term he'll be better off. I think that's part of what's going to really push a lot of people into Bitcoin. And going based on your story with Zimbabwe dollars, same thing. People there, they don't care about the volatility. They're not looking at it in terms of dollars because their expenses are in Zimbabwe dollar. Do they spend US dollars there or Zimbabwe dollars?
Both. Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
So to them, I mean, their purchasing power is going up, their cost of living is going down, and they're happy. They're satisfied with that. That's all. That's really all that matters. I think. I think the mindset that we need real estate as an investment. That's what a lot of people think. A lot of real estate investors, they think that without real estate as an investment, the world is going to stop. The earth is going to stop going around the sun. They think that things are going to change. That's part of what I was saying with uh, Bitcoin not being a religion. So I think real estate is truly a religion because even if a lot of people are presented with facts, if they're presented with charts and they're presented with all this information, they still can't see it because they don't want to. And the world is going to punish them for that. The financial industry, the financial system is going to punish them for that, but they haven't figured it out yet.
Do you think one of the reasons I saw one of your latest videos where you compare real estate and gold, and you did a prediction video where I'm not sure where Bitcoin goes in the cycle, let's say 180, and then it comes back to 64. We're around there right now. Do you think that that stops some people because they're not patient enough or they fear those big dips?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think people are more scared about losing their money than they are about gaining more. In general, I think that's just the way that most retail investors think because they don't want, like I said, they don't want to take risk. They want to have something that's stable. So if they're waiting for Bitcoin to become stable, then right now you can earn something like, if you're earning $30 an hour, you can earn something like 50,000 satoshis in 1 hour of work, which to me, I mean, right now it seems like it's very low, but in the future, an hour of your work is going to be 500 satoshis, 50 satoshis, and most people are going to be waiting until that point because that's when Bitcoin is going to be stable. Bitcoin is only going to be stable when one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin, and there's no other currency. In terms of every other currency, Bitcoin will always be volatile because, let's say, with US dollars, they can be created at will, they can be destroyed at will, the Federal Reserve can increase, decrease interest rates. So most people are going to ignore it until it's stable, and I think that's going to hurt them significantly. But at the end of it, they'll still be better off. They'll still be better off compared to the US dollar system because at some point they're going to be earning 50 to 100 satoshis an hour, but that 50 to 100 satoshis per hour will constantly be increasing in purchasing power.
So, sounds like you are already thinking in Bitcoin. Do you think there comes a time when there will only be Bitcoin?
I do. To be honest, I don't only think about it. I don't only think in Bitcoin at this point. The reason why is that, I mean, of course, my expenses are denominated in dollars, in Canadian dollars. Uh, at a point, I think there's going to be certain things that are just going to be stable in terms of Bitcoin, uh, in terms of satoshis. But there are going to be other things that are constantly decreasing in price, and I'm so ready for that to happen. But when you look at, like, there's this website called Priced in Bitcoin 21, your cost is just going down. Why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want your life to get cheaper so that you can spend your time, your money doing other things that you actually find interesting? I think it's a no brainer at this point. Once you see it, is when you actually start figuring out where this is going. But most people don't see it yet. Again, most people aren't going to see it until it's. Most people aren't going to be interested, I think, until it's $1 million or more.
Or there's pain in their own life. That's how I got to it.
Yes.
And you keep reminding me when I bought my condo, it was 22 Bitcoin, and 4 years later when I sold it was 8 Bitcoin. And we know that long term everything is going to continue to drop in price when priced in Bitcoin.
Yes.
So Jeff Booth is of the belief that in order for Bitcoin to succeed, it must become a payments rail. And that the best thing that we can do is live in the world we want to see. So, in other words, the more that I think in Bitcoin, the better. And why do I want to do this? Because I came for number go up, but I stayed for the revolution. I do care about the rest of the world. I want a fair place for everybody. I want everyone to be able to afford a home. And so I like that there's only 21 million and we cannot just print another 21 when we feel like it, and nobody can. And that's the other side of Bitcoin. Yes, all the numbers are great, but this is a fairer world we live in. What do you think your biggest reason for staying in Bitcoin is?
Oh, definitely number goes up. In the beginning, it was definitely number goes up because when you see the charts, it doesn't make any sense not to. But then, because people are in it for the number goes up, they start asking. Oh, this is how it happened for me. I started asking, what could make it so that this number goes up stops? I mean, it still can. Nobody can give you 100% guarantee, but it's probably 99%. I can probably tell you with like 90 to 99%, 95 to 99% confidence that this thing is going to go up over time. And nothing else can even compete. So why stick to anything else? Even if this thing fails, you learned something new. And just even if Bitcoin fails today, I've probably gained more from Bitcoin than I would have from the legacy financial system. So to me, that's a win. Even if it goes to zero, I've learned so much about how things work, about where things are going, where the world is going, that I didn't understand before. It's almost like have you watched the movie The Matrix?
Yes.
It's essentially that. That's exactly what it is. It's somebody took that veil off. Now you can see clearly what the world is. A lot of things right now are just designed to get us to spend more money, to give our purchasing power to massive companies and then be forced to continue working forever. That's the goal. That's essentially the goal. But then if you're not spending, your government's going to come in, they're going to take whatever they can. They're going to charge you taxes, they're going to charge you a wealth tax. Now they're looking at unrealized capital gains taxes, which to me is just it's crazy because your unrealized capital gains came from inflation. So they're taking that, they're charging you for inflation essentially. It doesn't, the current, once you see it, the current system doesn't make any sense. Once Neo saw that the world was the way that it was and humans were just being used as batteries, he couldn't look away. You can't unsee it once you see it. And that's, I think everybody's going to come to that final resolution, that final conclusion, that once you see where this is going, once you understand it, but I mean, you have to do the work on your own. Nobody can do the work for you. Nobody can force you to do the work. Nobody can give you their knowledge. But once you have to do it, you have to look, you have to see it for yourself. But once you see it, there's no turning back.
That's so true. It's a deep rabbit hole, and like you said, the Bitcoin standard is a great place to start
Yes.
understanding what money is. And then inflation. I knew about inflation. I didn't. I never thought inflation was theft, though. I don't think most people do. I don't
No.
think most people see inflation as theft. They don't
Yeah, they
even.
don't.
They don't even blame. I don't even know if they blame the government entirely. Well, they do. So, okay, we're at blaming the government maybe, but people do not know how the system works. And once you understand that, that's when I'm like, this is not right. And especially if you're doing a job you don't enjoy, then you are on that hamster wheel and not enjoying it for what? For then to be taxed, like you said. So there's many reasons why people come. The pain, something's not right in their own life, for number go up, and then we go down that rabbit hole. And yeah, I love that you said, even if this is not the solution, which we believe it is, it's such incredible technology with no leader. That's wonderful. Even if it's not, we do need some solution to our system.
And the only way that happens, the only way that we figure out a different solution is by testing this thing out. If you don't test it, then we're not going to find another solution. So I was talking to my friend yesterday. He was saying how a lot of innovation comes from the edges. A lot of innovation comes. It doesn't come from uh, Microsoft. It doesn't come from Amazon. It doesn't come from Google. From Apple. They buy innovation from the people who are at the bottom. They pay them a certain amount. They buy it The workers there are the ones who are innovating. It's not the CEO. The CEO is just finding ways to push strategy. So he was saying how innovation comes from the edges, and who knows, maybe in the next 30 years we find a way to scale Bitcoin to make it so that we can have 500 a million transactions a second while at the same time not sacrificing decentralization. But I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's me saying that the blockchain trilemma is going to be solved. I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's possible because everything in the real world has opportunity costs. Everything in the real world has sacrifices, and the people who are, let's say, promoting altcoins that are meant to replace Bitcoin, they're faster, they're more decentralized. These are the claims that are being made. The issue with a lot of people in those communities is that they don't understand the opportunity cost that their coin is making. What's the sacrifice that your creator made to make these claims? That's what they don't quite understand. I think with Bitcoin, we know what the opportunity cost is. We know that it's slow. We know that it takes time to process a transaction, but that's part of it. That's the value here. That's what keeps it decentralized. That's what keeps it the way that the way that it is. If it's any other system, let's say if it becomes centralized somehow, if nodes are run 50% of nodes are run by the US government and they can start controlling the system, then of course it doesn't work the way that it does. It doesn't work the way that it should. But I mean, who knows what the future holds? I think we could see something that we're surprised by. I think we could see that this thing just holds up and it does exactly what it needs to forever. I think Bitcoin just has a way of surviving and getting through things because it's consensus. It's a market consensus. All the smartest people in the world are putting in the time to understand this thing. And of course, maybe there's people that are looking past it. Eventually they'll get it too.
Well, according to people like Jeff Booth, he says that layer twos are already working on that level. It's not widespread or wide known, but they are already working. So
Yeah.
I only see, like you said, if the smartest people are here, they're just going to keep making it better. It just reminds me, you've done videos on UTXOs and that meme pull video, which are very technical, and you do understand it at a deeper level, and that helped me too. And I don't want to get into too depth of UTXOs, but at the moment we do have to manage them a little bit. But hopefully one day that will be taken care of. I don't know. I'm not technical, but
I think the only way for that to happen is if people use a layer two on a regular basis. I think that's the main thing here. So the way that I see things playing out is employers are going to pay you directly on a layer two, layer three, whatever the layer is, and then once you've accumulated a certain amount, you can use that layer two, layer three to pay for your expenses. And once you've accumulated a certain amount, you can move it to the layer one. You can have self sovereignty. See, I don't think most people are going to have that though. Around the world, don't think most people are going to be self sovereign because financial systems rely on trust. And I'm not saying that you trust somebody, you lend them your money, you earn a certain yield. I'm not saying that. That's just gambling at this point. But I mean, the way that I see it, we're going to need layer twos, which are going to be a little bit centralized, a little bit more centralized than the base layer. Other than that, the only solution is to make blocks bigger, allow more transactions. But the problem with that again is that it decreases the number of people who can run a node because the equipment is limited to, I guess, a certain level of output, a certain level of work that they can do. If they can't handle the block size, let's say blocks go to 16 megabytes, and we now need a 16 times bigger hard drive to store the blockchain. Not everybody's going to be able to afford that. Eventually, it'll keep growing, keep growing until it's centralized in Amazon warehouses and Amazon Web Services is the one that's holding 40% of the nodes for Bitcoin. But that's not the world. That's not what we want. I think that's where Ethereum went, and I don't think we want that because we want something that is decentralized. We want something that we don't have to worry about somebody stealing from us. We want to make sure that 21 million coins is the cap, and it never changes. And if it does, then we know that Bitcoin probably isn't working the way that we need it to.
Yeah, very good points. So, is there anything else besides Bitcoin that you're really passionate about?
Um, so I like playing. I know a lot of people they like watching sports. I like playing sports. I don't like watching sports. I feel like watching sports, watching somebody else get fit, it doesn't really make any sense to me. I love watching. I love playing sports. I love um, playing hockey. Actually, I played hockey before this podcast, which was awesome. Regularly playing hockey, it keeps me fit. It keeps me able to just keep moving. And I think I'm 32 right now, and I think this is the point where a lot of people kind of they give up on their fitness, and I don't plan to do that. That's not the plan at all for me. I plan to keep trying to be fit for the rest of my life. I want to be walking when I'm 90. That's the goal. So I'm passionate about that. I do a lot of research on um, weightlifting, body mechanics. I used to do a lot of research on that. I'm just constantly learning about whatever I can. Honestly, if I find a random video on YouTube, I'll play it in the background if I have to. I'm perfectly fine with that. Yeah, all kinds of topics are interesting. I mean, is there anything that you want to discuss?
Well, and just on that, once Bitcoin gives us a lot of hope in many ways
Yes.
because it's a hope for a better world on a better system. And when you have hope for a better world, you tend to do what you love doing. And then you also need to stay healthy. So many people do go down that health rabbit hole and spend time wisely, which for you, that's playing ice hockey, I assume.
Ball hockey. I play
Oh,
ball hockey.
ball
Yeah,
hockey. Okay. Well,
yeah,
you
it's
are in
awesome.
Canada, right? So,
Yes, of course, of
um,
course. I think just learning about Bitcoin kind of. I made a video about it about how our food has been damaged by Bitcoin. I've made some posts about it. People they don't get it. They think, oh, Bitcoin and food, that there's no connection there. Doesn't make any sense. You're just taking this and you're making something up. You're making up a topic because you want more engagement or you want more content to post. But that's not the case. Once you see the connection, it's impossible not to see where it's going. I mean, you can see that there's. Have you read the book, Fiat Food?
part of it I have. Yes.
It's great. There's the author is on a couple of podcasts with Safety Namuz, Matthew Lishek. He did a lot of research. He went really deep down the rabbit hole to see how Bitcoin solves money, or sorry, solves food. And there are so many things there that I didn't see. But once you see it, again, like I said, you can't unsee it. Once you see the true facts, once you see the true direction that the world is taking, you can't unsee it.
So before real estate, I was in personal training and holistic health. So, but
Oh,
mostly
amazing.
holistic health. So I have always known what's happening with our food system. And I have been healthy most of my life. And now I'm, in my 50s and I'm still healthy. And I believe it's because of I have avoided the conventional food because really it's full of hormones, antibiotics, if it's even real. So I got the health part right first. But along with your health, you also need to have your finances correct because you need to be able to do the things you want to do. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that as part of our Bitcoin rabbit hole too.
Oh, absolutely. I think it touches everything. It touches absolutely everything. There's nothing that money doesn't touch. Everything has some relationship with money. The materials we use, where we live, what we eat, all of that has to do with money. If you can't afford it, then you, of course, can't get the higher quality food. And I think one of the issues is that a lot of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, they're the ones who are ending up they're the ones who are ending up reliant on low quality foods because they can't afford the steak, because the steak has gone up 30% over the last year. They can't afford it because if they buy the steak, they can't pay for their rent. If they buy the steak, they can't pay for their utilities. Their internet bill went up, their insurance bill went up. So I think food is something that is downstream of money, and it's something that most people don't really think about its relationship with how money works, with our the theft. that we're dealing with, the inflation that we're dealing with. They don't make the connection until somebody points it out. And I think in the video that I made, I did a pretty good job, and of course, it could have been improved. It was early when I just started talking about Bitcoin on YouTube, but the connection, once you make it, it's very difficult not to see what the connection is.
Yes, and then you also remind me the low time preference that we also get from Bitcoin, because I was noticing that we live in a very consumer society. I live in Miami, and then I go back to see my family in Zimbabwe, so I see a big difference right away between those two places. But it is a consumer society wherever we are. And now that I've got Bitcoin, I think twice about buying frivolous things. I still think experiences are important, spending time with family and friends. So I will spend money on that. But I think twice about the big purchases because of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's the delayed gratification that you get. I've had my car for almost 10 years. It was an old car to begin with. It was a 2009 Honda Civic. I mean, it's still running great. I've wanted to get a new car, but it doesn't make any sense to me because why would I? I'm still getting from place A to place B. I'm able to fulfill my desire to try transport myself with this car. So why would I need a new car? Why would I need a car that costs me more money? That, of course, there's trade offs here. There's the benefits of having a new car, of course, maybe more fuel efficient and maybe safer. But you have to do the cost benefit analysis yourself. You need to figure it out for yourself. And in the past, if I hadn't understood what Bitcoin was, I probably would have gotten a new car by now. But it doesn't really make any sense to me because I can just put that money towards Bitcoin. I can put that money towards my future. If I take care of the car, if I maintain it, it'll probably last me another 10 years if I wanted to. So,
And you can buy more Bitcoin.
exactly.
So, Rajat, to end on a positive note, where do you see Bitcoin going in the next 10 years, and the adoption? How do you see that playing out?
I don't know where it's going to go. All I know is that it's probably going to be better than whatever it is today. Regardless of what the layer twos, people say that the layer twos are broken. They say Lightning is broken. They say Liquid is broken. I don't know exactly. I don't know all the different layer twos. All I know is that in 10 years, we're going to have so much more innovation. We're going to have so many more people working on this, trying to develop it, trying to support it. I think we're going to see more and more financial institutions in it. So, I mean, it's a no brainer. The price is probably going to go up. Nobody can guarantee it. But once you see the fundamentals, 10 years from now, I think it'll probably be 10, 15x higher.
Yes. So tell us where people can find you.
Yes, so I'm on Twitter. You can search Rajat Soni Finance. You'll find me. Uh, I'm also on Instagram. I don't really post on Instagram anymore. I'm also on YouTube. I think the YouTube is the one that I'm really working on right now. Been putting out a lot of content, trying to put out videos 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week whenever I can. Um, yeah, check those out. Honestly, if you just search my name, you'll find me on every platform that I mentioned: Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I don't really go on LinkedIn much, but Instagram, Twitter. I have a newsletter as well. If you're interested, it's on every. I think it's on every one of my videos, but I'll start adding it if I haven't already. So
And
yeah,
I'll put links to your YouTube and Twitter below.
perfect.
And thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, it was great being here. I appreciate you having the time to actually interview me, have the conversation that we had.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.